mud kitchens do kind of go through this kind of change as it gets into the winter months. Partly there's like a sensory element to this thing that changes in terms of like, how does it feel to be tactile with mud? There's also this consideration, I think, that we need to be aware of, like, how long are your sessions? Like, so Wem and I are often out in the woods for 6-7 hour days. If your hands start to get cold because you're playing with mud right first thing in the morning, that can really impact on a longer session, as opposed to like if you run maybe 90-minute sessions or 2-hour sessions, then maybe you've got a bit more leeway for like, okay, you want to do this play so much, let's go for it. We will navigate you being a little bit uncomfortable afterwards, but on balance, this is the whole thing. But thinking about how do you keep that kind of enthusiasm going for mud kitchens as we get into the winter. And one of the biggest things that I think I would kind of advocate for is, while they are called mud kitchens, and obviously there's huge benefits that come with working with mud as a like malleable substance and all these things, I think we can, taking this kind of thought on board, we can kind of broaden it out to like loose parts kitchen. So reflecting on like, what have I seen, but also what have I facilitated? I think one of the biggest things that you can do as you move into the winter is switching out some of the resources or that are available in your mud kitchen, and adding in as many loose parts as you can. And now that's where you're kind of adding in like wood cookies, you're adding in maybe conkers, acorns, pine cones. I know some of those are harder to get hold of in the winter, but maybe then it's pebbles. It can be like beads and things like that, anything you're comfortable having in your setting that's not going to detriment, the woodland. You don't want to be including like, I mean, maybe you do. I was going to say things like bottle tops and things like that might be considered like litter if they moved away from the mud kitchen. But thinking about those kind of small resources like gravels and pebbles and acorns and pine cones that can still allow all of those things of like pouring and manipulating and stacking and combining, but they are accessible even when you're wearing these like maybe mittens or huge thick gloves, or we're still facilitating that kind of like mastery play, but also trying to take into account like what kind of layers are people wearing in the winter? Do they have the same dexterity? Do they have like the same mobility in their body? And do they want the sensory experience of mud? Well, maybe they still want the sensory experience of like preparing and bringing and mastery play and all those things. But mud is not the resource anymore. And so thinking about those kind of loose parts, those things, I mean, sand is probably the smallest you could get as you go down that like pebble gravel continuum. But I think sand has its own issues in winter, so I'd probably steer clear of sand. But yeah, Sarah, as you're looking towards the winter, thinking about stockpiling, go full squirrel mode, go a little bit feral, go hoardery, get them conkers, get the acorns, go out to like, okay, you haven't heard me say this, but like go to like National Trust properties, go to like places like that and just fucking fill up bags. Yeah, that would be my thing. Sarah, thank you so much for your message. Guys, if there's anything you hear in the podcast you want to ask, my advice, Wem's advice, everybody's advice, then send us a message, theforestschoolpodcast.com. You can send us voice notes, you can send us text messages. And if you're enjoying the podcast and you want to head over to patreon.com/The Forest School Podcast, we're putting loads more stuff up there, like extra resources that are coming out, kind of like guides and reflective practices that I'm kind of going, oh, we did the podcast on mud kitchens. This week on Patreon, I've just put up 3 reflective questions through the week for practitioners to kind of engage with and go like, yeah, how do we assess the mud kitchen? What's your mud kitchen doing? So this week, there'll be a couple of resources going up about like reflecting and engaging on your bushcraft skills. And so if you're thinking that, one, you want to support the podcast, love you. Thank you so much. But also if you're thinking like, oh, I'd love like a continuous practice thing that gets me reflecting a little bit more, asks me some kind of questions about my practice, then head to patreon.com/The Forest School Podcast. It's all over there. We would really love to see you there.